One Geraldo Rivera, Fox News contributor, Hispanic Fox News contributor, is having a hell of a time trying to get across to his Fox News audience, white, Republican, Trump supporters, that telling somebody to go back to Africa is the textbook definition of racist. And for whatever reason, there are people on this channel, so I know Geraldo is going to have a hard time making that case on Fox News. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. This is a Saturday edition of the show. I am here. I'm pretty much alone. My wife is somewhere else. So let's do the news since I'm up and I'm Adam. This one was interesting. This is an interesting clip. Now, if you remember, I remember Geraldo when Geraldo used to have a talk show. When Geraldo used to stand out with a microphone, put it in people's face, and ask them questions. He used to do that. Do you remember this? This was a famous episode that took place. I'm not going to play it out because I want them to copyright strike the video. But basically, what this boils down to is Geraldo is having a bunch of racists on stage. He's bringing them together. And he has somebody who's Hispanic, who's black. And there's a fight. Now, this fight erupts in outright pandemonium. Geraldo gets a broken nose over this. But this show garnered buku ratings. This was before, it was common to have fights on sets. The whole notion of Springer and all this stuff now looks like it's just kind of run of the mill. They just do it for spectacle. This is before it was spectacle. Initially it's reality, then it's spectacle over top of the reality. But in this case, this was real. He had these guys on. They outright got into a fight on stage. Geraldo is on Fox News, and he's trying to explain to the people on Fox News that this is racist. You didn't used to have to tell people that. It used to be the cartoonish version of racism to tell somebody to go back to Africa or go back to Dominican Republic or go back to wherever, despite the fact that most of the time they're Americans. But he needs to explain this to them. The wild part about this is, even if you, as an individual, didn't necessarily see what Trump did was racist, I would at the very least thought you had the faculty to see that it was dangerous. And yet, even that seems to be missing in this particular conversation. And again, if he's having difficulties explaining this to the right wing, I've had trouble explaining it to some people on the left. Look, from my standpoint as an African American in this country has a history associated with it. A violent, racist, vicious history associated with it. We're only a couple of decades out from that particular history. We're not that far away. I'm saying a couple, but you know what I mean. We're not that far away. There's not that much of a distance. And the president is now using outright, overt racism. This is not a dog whistle. He's just gone outright, go back to Africa. I don't necessarily think he started that off with this notion of running a campaign on it, but based on the reaction of the Democratic Party and the media, he started using this as a campaign stunt. And this campaign stunt for political expedience, he's going to run around the country and he's going to whip up one group, one hate rally after the next into a fury over somebody who he's saying is spitting on our troops, is looking down on America, etc., etc., etc. Not to mention, she's already Muslim, so he gets to get the immigrant thing on top of it. Donald Trump is not unclear on who his base is. He's not unclear on who his base is. And this is the worst aspects of politics. This is outright disgusting. And it kills me that in this day and age, that is considered, no, we think that's okay. We think that's okay. We think that's okay. We're white. It's not against us, so we think that's okay. And that's not a political thing. I mean, there may be somewhat of a divide on people who hate Trump and ergo would just automatically side on the fact that, that they dislike him on this. But my problem with this is, I think a lot more people are okay with Trump said than the Democratic Party believes. And those people are not just on the right, those people are also on the left, because this doesn't just break down from the standpoint of politics, this breaks down on this thing of race. Sad, but it is true. Sad but true. Let's take a listen to this. Pete Hegseth doesn't understand how go back to Africa is racist. He's not alone.
You, like many, have accused him of racism, but if you go back and look at that tweet, he's not talking about race. He's talking about whether or not you love this country and appreciate it. And if you don't appreciate it and don't love it and don't want to work to make it better, then maybe you could consider going somewhere else. There's plenty of countries on Earth.
Come on, Pete. This is their country. They're citizens of the United States.
He's talking about, in general, about the principles of our
What
country.
if someone
If you
said
don't
that to
believe
you?
in
You
it,
don't like it, you could leave.
absolutely.
Some things are
They can say that to me.
intolerable. You cannot say that.
Here's the difference. You're white. That's the difference. People who pretend as if there's no racial breakdown is nonsense. That's for people who are white who act as if this world has entirely changed and that race doesn't necessarily matter, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's people who are also on the left that likes to pretend that it doesn't matter and just kind of skip ahead to some kind of utopia. There is a difference. A white person being in blackface has a historical precedence to it as opposed to a black person being in whiteface. There's a difference in those things. A black person using the N-word is different than a white person using the N-word. There's a historical precedent. And you have all these people who try to act like that's not true. It is true. There's a historical precedent. Some things are loaded, some things are charged. Telling somebody to go back to Africa and they just so happen to be black and from America is racist by definition. And pretending as if you don't know that in order to defend Donald Trump. And look, I'm almost in belief that he's defending himself on this front because I think a lot of these people had no issue with what Donald Trump said. But these people are just being supporters. Supporters. Get your residential black friend and ask him how they felt, how he or she felt about it. Let's let him finish. Geraldo is doing that job. He's doing that task of trying to explain to them why creating a threatening atmosphere and pointing out and saying somebody to go back to their home country of origin. It is as American as apple pie to criticize this country. She is a member of Congress. Her job is literally to find defects and to fix those defects using laws. I mean, why are you writing laws if you didn't necessarily think that was a problem in the first place? She's doing her job. When Donald Trump decided to shut down the government for a campaign gimmick, he wasn't. Let's keep going.
You can't say it to me.
Well, I could say it to
had
you.
10 street fights based on that. Someone saying to me because I'm Puerto Rican, go
Because
back to
I'm
where you
not
came from.
looking at
I
your
was born
skin.
on 17th Street.
I'm not
This
looking
is
at the
where I
color
came
of your
from.
skin. I'm looking at what you stand for, the principles of our country. White, black, otherwise.
Once
it's
you
not about
make
race.
nationhood and citizenship like that conditional on your political loyalties, you run a very dangerous path there, Major, and you should
There's
know
a lack
that.
of gratitude.
Geraldo, what about the fact that
Gratitude is not necessary to be a member of this country. Never was, never has been. Period. And on this other thing, the point that Geraldo is making is so goddamn good because he's talking about almost a textbook definition of nationalism or of this kind of white nationalism. I mean, he's, if you're arguing that she needs to be, gracious and thankful and that she can't criticize this country, and if she does, she needs to get the hell out. And you're also adding that not just to somebody who was from Somalia and who was a refugee, but also to somebody who was African American who was born in this country, who was also Puerto Rican and born in this country. You're making statehood and nationhood a condition of loyalty. We've seen that in other places. There's one more section to this. But that's despicable. Like, that's outright despicable that he's making that argument, that he's backing Trump up on this. Look, I could see somebody saying, I don't think it's racist, but at the very least I think it's dangerous because the president shouldn't be focusing that much attention on one person in that way. They're not even going there. He went outright to, he wasn't talking about race. What was he talking about? Go back to your country of origin. You can leave. You can get out of this country. Get out of this country. The problem is the country of origin to most of the people who he was talking about was here. It was here. But yeah, no problem at all.
Someone said that to you. You don't like it, you could leave.
Absolutely.
Some things are
They can say that to me.
intolerable. You cannot say that.
You could totally
can't
say
say
it
it
to
to
me.
me.
Well, I could say it to
had
you.
10 street fights based on that. Someone saying to me because I'm Puerto Rican, go
Because
back
I'm
where you
not
came from.
looking at
I
you
was
through-
born on 17th
I'm
Street.
not
This
looking
is
at the
where I
color
came
of
from.
Tell somebody to go back where they came from. What are you using to make the determination that they came from anywhere else? This is just a stupid argument. It's an utterly ludicrous argument. And, I don't know if this guy means it. I haven't had any conversations. I've talked to one or two people about it. I've had some really good conversations with people about it. But look, this is problematic. This is problematic. And I think, oddly enough, the biggest problem of it is less the tweet and more the reaction to the tweet, because the reaction to the tweet allowed a campaign launch, if that makes sense. It's like the tweet itself was just a tweet. Trump tweets random shit all the time. That tweet would have went under the water. Nobody would have paid any attention to it. I said the president was racist from day one, so the tweet doesn't shock me in the least that he would tweet things that are that way. The hate rally is different. Because, look, it's one thing for you to hit other presidential candidates. You're hitting somebody who they don't know. And you're almost having this specter of a person who you're vilifying with this kind of racist vitriol. I mean, the notion, the stuff that Donald Trump was saying in that speech was horrendous. And even if you disagree with Ilhan's politics, do you really want the president of the United States using her for political expedience, whipping a crowd up into furor and pointing at her in this way? He's not doing this to equals, meaning other political opponents that are on his level. He's doing this to somebody who's below him. I'm just saying, if he has to do this in order to get reelected, why? Why is his record so horrendous and so bad that this is the card that he needs to play? He needs to play the race card in order to get elected. I'll end it here. Shout out to Geraldo for trying. I mean, mind you, this is one of those things of, John McCain not liking torture because he was tortured. But if he was a Republican that wasn't tortured, he'd be perfectly okay with it. It just so happened that Geraldo is Hispanic, and this in some way applies to him, so he cares about it. Good. At the very least, he can try to explain it to him. And, this is why I look at stuff like that and I think that guy's being disingenuous. Either that guy's being disingenuous or that guy just feels that way also, in which case he feels like he's defending himself. And unfortunately, sadly, honestly, kills me to say this, but I think a larger segment of the population looks at that and is okay with it. Because I think a large part of it, they think they're defending themselves. Just saying. Shout out to Geraldo, Martin used to call him Geraldo, for trying to explain to a Fox News audience why the president doing that is beyond the pale. I wish he would have went more along the lines of dangerous, because they would never understand the whole racist thing. They would get, maybe, on some level, that it might be dangerous. We've had enough mass killings by right-wingers to, at the very least, be aware of that as he's doing that. Not so much. The moment that somebody gets injured, the first thing he's going to say, it wasn't me. And they need to pin that shit on his chest, because he's earned it. And everybody else has supported him in it. Thanks all. By the way, I got a super chat, and hopefully I can get all of this on the same one. What a shock to see Geraldo actually making sense. Brom SL1. Yeah, he was making sense on this one. Shout out to Geraldo. Shout out to Geraldo. Geraldo was making sense on this one. All right. Does this end up with Geraldo getting punched? If not, meh. No, it doesn't end up with Geraldo getting punched. He doesn't hit anybody, nor does Geraldo get punched. White isn't a race because there's no such thing. Fair enough, but you know what I'm talking about. Let's see. What about that? Albinos can be food. What can be food? What? Anything can be food, even other people. The Hamptons are not a defensible position. No, they're not. That's what's his name? I know you're talking about the Irish, Scottish cat, Mark. God, I can't think of his last name, but yeah, he makes that argument that the Hamptons are not a defensible position. All right, I'm going to end this. And back in the day, he was a good reporter. You talking about Geraldo? Geraldo, it's funny how, those things changed. Jerry Springer is still doing those shows right now. And Jerry Springer has gotten to the point of just having them fight. That's all they do. The entire show, they just fight. Maury Povich used to have a show. Now, Maury Povich used to be married to the Asian woman that was on a news show. Maury Povich used to have an actual talk show. Now, all of Maury Povich shows are Who's the Baby Daddy? And you know what? If I had the opportunity, I would watch each and every one of those shows because all of them are fucking fascinating. The wild part about this is Geraldo went into Fox News, which is, you didn't really get a feel for his politics outside of him not liking people being racist on that show. And apparently he still don't like people being racist because, after all, that points to him, meaning he's the object of that to his audience. And so at the very least, there's that. At the very least, there's that. So clap of the hands to Geraldo. Thanks all. Like, share. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Even $1 helps. Thanks all.